Good morning, everyone. Wow. It's Friday morning. April. Wow. So, my name is John Pauly. I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and Vice Provost for Academic Operations. And it's my pleasure to welcome you. I think we have pretty much a hometown crowd here today, except for maybe our fellows from Massachusetts. Anyhow, if you're a guest, we want to welcome you to Windows on the World. Eastern every week has two different events. One more worship focused on Wednesday, chapel, held over in the gym, and then Windows on the World, held Friday mornings at 10 o'clock here in McGinnis Auditorium. Before I relinquish the microphone, I would like to make one housekeeping item, and that is that when we bring folks in from off campus, and that would be true in this case, we like to have a luncheon afterwards to continue the conversation. Maybe you're hesitant to ask a question or you'd like to engage in conversation with, in this case, our fellows. So afterwards, at 11:30, Baird Library will meet to continue the conversation. If you're a guest on campus and you don't have a meal plan, you can get lunch for $6. Please notify Bill there, and he'll give you a tray, and that's a bargain. So come and continue with us. I am pleased to introduce the introducer, the Reverend Dr. Joseph Modica, our university chaplain, who will introduce our program this morning. Joe, don't look anyplace else. I'm introducing you. Okay.
Well, thank you, Dean Pauly, for that robust introduction. It is good to be with you this morning. We have a special Windows on the World planned, which is uniquely positioned because of the Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship. So I will explain a little bit more about that as we progress, and we'll be able to meet the students that are involved in that. But I want to begin with a video that was taken last year of the Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship. It's about 2 minutes long, and then I'll come back to make some additional remarks before we actually get into our conversation. So let's see if I can do this reasonably well.
And share ways that we get together around the dinner table.
The Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship is a partnership between students at Eastern University and Episcopal students at Temple Pastoral. We come together twice over the course of a year just to have interfaith conversations, to build bridges between our religions. I think there's something beautiful in the connection between the religions because we all share the same God. And because of that, I really wanted to apply for the fellowship. Something that's been a challenge is to think about this is how someone else sees the same thing that I'm looking at in a different light.
Having these conversations where Joe would say, here's something that I would want to talk about, and I would say, oh, here's a Jewish spin on that. That actually ends up being something. We start with the same word and it ends up with something completely different.
Some of my favorite parts just were when we were having fun. I loved the discussions. I loved getting to explore what I really believe in and solidifying that. Being able to articulate it, I think, was formative for me. My favorite thing I learned, that's a hard question to answer, I think, because I don't know if it was a specific thing as much as just getting to learn about Jewish culture as a whole. They have so much symbolism tied into everything they do. I learned a little bit about what it means to be Jewish, both ethnically and in terms of faith, and I'm going to be able to take that with me wherever I go. If I could say something to new fellows that are coming in, I would say it's really important to walk into this with the mindset of seek first, to understand and to be understood. Let yourself be teachable. So I think going in and asking others questions and being curious, because that will incite curiosity in them as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That was produced, as I had mentioned, a year ago by our fellows. And let me get back to the slideshow here. So this is the 4th annual Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship, which was established in the fall of 2015 after a year-long process of discernment. Some of you are aware of the fellowship. It involves 2 institutions, Temple Bet Shalom in Needham, Massachusetts, which is about 20 miles outside of Boston, and Eastern University. And basically, we bring our cohort of students to Temple Bet Shalom in Needham, Massachusetts in the fall to have an immersion experience in Reformed Judaism, and then they are then come to Eastern University in April, and they have an experience being on a Christian campus at a university, and we do a variety of different programming around that. Now, why is this fellowship then called the Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship? Well, it has to do with honoring someone who spent nearly 30 years here at Eastern University, Dr. Ted Chamberlain, in the capacity of Dean of Students and Vice President for Student Development. I had the privilege of working with Dr. Chamberlain for 13 years. Yes, that is me on the left. You'll notice 2 things. I haven't aged a bit. And secondly, yes, I still have those glasses. But and Dr. Chamberlain's on the right. We had a wonderful relationship. He died in an untimely death in 2010, and that's when conversations began, particularly with David Feldman and Sidney Feldman, to begin to establish the Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship. I don't know if Lyria is here this morning, but Lyria Chamberlain makes the visit each time, both in the fall and the spring, and so we want to make sure we recognize, so we recognized her. Is she back there? Lyria, oh, she's walking at what timing? Please recognize Lyria Chamberlain, the widow of Dr. Ted Chamberlain. We are so delighted, Lyria, that you're here. You may remember this picture. It's a little embarrassing, not for Ted, but for me. But nevertheless, thank you for being here. We'll hear more about Dr. Chamberlain and the fellowship from his dear friend David Feldman when David offers some remarks later on in this program. David and his wife Sidney, through their vision and generosity, established the Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship, and without them, there would be no fellowship. So I just thought, now I know you're sitting in different places, but Sidney and Dave, would you just stand? We want to recognize your generosity and vision for this Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship. Thank you. There are many things that happen when we visit Temple Bet Shalom. That's the current cohort of Eastern University students and Temple Bet Shalom students looking and having a conversation surrounding a scroll, a Torah scroll. Rachel Happel, my colleague, will talk a little bit more about that and other things that they do when they're at Temple Bet Shalom. We also do some cultural things in the Boston area where we had an opportunity to visit different houses of worship within Judaism, different, you may say, branches of Judaism, which was phenomenal. And so we appreciate all that kind of immersion experience. The Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship has as its guiding principle, it's a Jewish-Christian interfaith exchange of shared learning and growth. And basically, we have used the New Testament scholar and former Bishop of Stockholm, who served as president and professor emeritus at Harvard Divinity School, who died in 2008. He has 3 rules of religious engagement, Krista Stendahl. And the first one is, when trying to understand another religion, you should ask the adherents of that religion and not its enemies. a good principle to remember in interfaith conversation. The second is for don't compare your best to their worst. And the third one is one that we, I think, talk most about. Leave room for holy envy. What is it about a different religious tradition that is compelling, that is interesting, that is something you would like to mimic or in essence incorporate perhaps in your own religious tradition? As a matter of fact, the Episcopal priest, Professor Barbara Brown Taylor, just came out with a book about 3 weeks ago that I got the chance to read excerpts from. It is called, believe it or not, Holy Envy, Finding God in the Faith of Others, and she has a chapter on Krista Stendahl in which she unpacks these religious rules of engagement. So as we continue our conversation this morning, you're going to get a chance to meet the current students from Temple Bet Shalom and Eastern University who have been part of this fourth fellowship. But before I do, I want to introduce a person who is the founding visionary, along with his wife, Sydney, a generous person, kind, someone who I admire in our friendship over the last, actually 5 years, and someone who I stay at their home every time I come in the fall. And it's always a good opportunity to do that. Would you please give a warm welcome to David Feldman here from Temple Bet Shalom.
That picture was taken a year ago when we were 2 hours late to the opening dinner because of that oil spill, you might remember, and we didn't have time to change. Anyway, my connection to this, as Joe mentioned, was that I grew up 4 houses away from Ted Chamberlain in Newton, Massachusetts, and we were 4 months apart in age, and we spent thousands of hours together in childhood doing all the things that boys do and aren't supposed to tell their parents about. And our relationship continued through our adulthood. Our wives are friendly, our children are friendly, their spouses are friendly, our grandchildren are friendly. So we have quite a history together. And we grew up in very different faith traditions. Ted was brought up with a strict adherence to the Baptist sect of Protestantism, and I was raised in a Reformed Jewish tradition. The main takeaway that I have from this was that there were no barriers whatsoever to our friendship, despite these completely different backgrounds. As we matured into our adulthood, as Joe mentioned, Ted came to Eastern, and I embarked on a traditional business career. My wife Sydney and I raised our children in the Reformed tradition in the synagogue in Needham, Mass, that the other half of this fellowship participates in. And my children, celebrated a bar mitzvah, each of our 3 sons, which signifies entering adulthood in the Jewish faith, and continued their studies through their sophomore year, where they graduated from our religious school. At the same time, Ted and his family continued to be observant in the Protestant tradition, and both of his daughters graduated from Christian universities. I really respected Ted's wide view of the world, combined with a strong adherence to his own beliefs. And that's one of the core factors in this fellowship. And so it seemed to be a natural, when he passed away, to establish this fellowship. And here are the key components to honor his legacy. Provide an opportunity for students of different faith traditions from these 2 institutions to learn about each other's religions and encourage friendship between them. Having students realize how much they have in common despite their religious differences. Formalize a program between the 2 institutions, their faculty and students, to design a curriculum of study, discussion, guidance, and community service through the faculty leadership from both institutions. So the first 4 years have demonstrated success, and we owe a debt of gratitude to both Joe Modica and Rachel Happel for I would hate to count how many hours they've contributed to this fellowship, developing curriculum, teaching, mentoring, and overall supervision. So I will just conclude quickly with an excerpt from a eulogy that I gave, along with several other people, at Ted's memorial service. I marveled at his ability to maintain a strong faith while relating to people from all walks of life. I respected his intellect, the books he wrote, the missions he performed, and the consulting engagements he had all over the world. How fortunate was I to have experienced this special friendship, to have laughed and expressed disappointment, felt grateful, been open, and shared wonderful times with a lifelong friend of his caliber. So while his physical presence is gone, his soul will live on in the minds of all who knew him. It's my hope and prayer that this fellowship will continue to honor Ted's legacy in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you, David. The photo that David alluded to is that he was given an award, a community service award from Northwestern Mutual Insurance, a company that he had worked for a number of years. They gave $15,000 to the fellowship based on David's visionary ideas about what it means to be in community together with people of different faiths. At our opening dinner last evening of the Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship, I said something that I really, really believe. In light of what has happened in recent months at the Tree of Life Synagogue and at Christland Church, right, the mosque shooting in New Zealand, I would say that the world needs the Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship. There's something holy about what we're doing in light of what it means to live in the world as Christians and as Jews, and to be faithful to our traditions and to love our neighbor as ourselves. Very important. We are going to soon hear from our students, which I'm looking forward to, current fellows from Temple Bet Shalom and Eastern University. As David mentioned, and I thank you for the comment about my efforts here, but it would not work if I didn't have a great partner at Temple Bet Shalom, who works tirelessly in education. She's the director of K through 12 at Temple Bet Shalom. And so Rachel is a friend. We've gotten to know each other at Sky Zone and other activities along the way. She's wonderful with her husband and 2 children. And so friendship is really at the core of why this fellowship can work the way it does. So I'm going to ask Rachel to come up, and she'll get the ball rolling with regards to both Temple Bet Shalom fellows. They're going to be talking about challenges, and then we'll move into some of the blessings they have experienced by being part of the fellowship. Would you welcome Rachel Happel?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I was telling Joe and I was telling our fellows that on our way here, I really felt like I was coming to a family reunion. These last 4 years have been all about relationship building between our institutions, and of course, it's really among the people within the institutions. And so whenever the Eastern Fellows and Joe come up to visit us in the fall, I feel like I'm welcoming family in, and whenever I come here, I feel like I'm being welcomed by a family as well. So thank you for that, and thank you, David, for enabling that to happen. I'm excited to introduce our fellows. Joe and I have asked our fellows to talk about some of the challenges and some of the blessings that come with interfaith dialogue and learning. So we've asked a couple of them to prepare about the challenges and a couple to prepare about the blessings from each institution. So I want to invite up Allie Zaff to come first, and whoever comes after Allie, which I think is Julia, why don't you come up too? Introduce yourself and
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm a junior at Needham High School, and I was asked to talk about a new idea that I've encountered through this experience. So, one new idea that I encountered during this experience is that God has 3 different forms, all with their own unique qualities. So, in Judaism, I was always taught that there is one God. So, when I heard about the Trinity, I was initially pretty confused. Thankfully, though, Joe was there to answer my questions. He used a metaphor of water to help me conceptualize this new idea. Joe said that water can take 3 forms, the form of liquid water, ice, and as water vapor, just as God can take the form of God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Each of these versions of God are equally important, but have different qualities that make them unique. Therefore, while essentially all 3 of them are God, if you were praying for forgiveness, you would specifically pray to Jesus, since forgiveness is one of Jesus' qualities. You guys probably have all heard of this concept before, but to me it was unique, and I've really enjoyed talking about these different things, different parts of our culture, and I found it interesting. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julia. My question was similar to Allie's, but it was, have you encountered something that has challenged a belief that you hold? So this experience has presented me with many new ideas and beliefs that are different from what I'm so used to in Judaism. The most prominent and probably broadest of them all is the idea that as religions, Christianity is considered a faith, and for Judaism, it's considered more of a people. And I've learned that in Christianity, the most important aspect is the observer's belief in God. However, in Judaism, what I have been taught is that when you are Jewish, it doesn't really matter if you believe in God, and it doesn't matter if you follow the commandments exactly and things like that, but what we as Jews value is the community and all the values that we all hold together. And so the idea of Christianity being centered around someone's connection to God was definitely a new concept for me, and it challenged what I know about Judaism from my whole life. But it really gave me a new perspective on the role religion plays for different people of different faiths, and it opened my eyes to the differences and similarities between Judaism and Christianity.
So I think now we want to invite up the 2 Eastern Fellows who are addressing challenges in interfaith learning and dialogue.
Hello. Hi. My name is Maddie. I'm a junior social work major here at Eastern. So I guess to give a little background before I share my challenge, I grew up in a Catholic religion and also Presbyterian. So just a lot of focus on tradition, or traditionalism, I should say. So more so rules versus relationship. So that really shaped the way that I viewed tradition. I kind of just took it as that they don't really care about the relationship with God, and it's more important to make sure you say your daily prayers or go to Mass or ask forgiveness from your priest. So that really shaped, and I realized that that is a bit of a harsh judgment, but that's all I grew up with. So going to Temple Beth Shalom and seeing the little hints of tradition that they have there really opened my eyes to how tradition can really enhance faith rather than hinder it. Whether it's between the Torah and how so sacred it is, so sacred that you can't even touch it with your own hands, or the eternal light, the light that's in the room that shines at all times during the day and night to show the ever-presence of God, or mezuzahs. Am I saying that right? I don't know. Basically, there are these little scrolls that it's in between each doorway that have Torahs, and the idea is that you'll be blessed as you go in and out. And I totally absorbed that, and I just fell in love with that, and it really has challenged me to reevaluate my ideas about tradition and even seek out churches that would be more traditional in a sense. So yeah, that's all.
Hi, I'm Katrina Belmontes. I'm a senior political science major. So a little bit of background about me. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island in the Caribbean. So I grew up around different religions, but I grew up in Christianity. So being someone that loves diversity and loves learning about different faith experiences and having grown up with people of different religions, when I saw the email about the Interfaith Fellowship, I thought it was very interesting and I thought I should apply, which I kind of struggled with back and forth, but I really felt like God was leading me to apply for the fellowship. So I did. And I got accepted, and going to Temple Bet Shalom was really amazing, and I enjoyed every second of it, and I enjoyed learning about Jewish culture. But I also found some things that was new to me, and also challenged what I know as a Christian. One of these things that challenged my belief is the idea, so in Judaism, from the book that we read, they talked about humans are innately good, and they have like two angels on their shoulders, one that's good and one that's bad, and that's how like they do things. But as a Christian, we learn that everyone is fallen and broken. So I guess learning about the fact that actually we might all just really be good and just make poor decisions changed the way that I view humans in general, and Christianity in general. And one new idea that I encountered was the idea of that if we take time to take care of the people around us and love the people around us, then, and not do it because we want to go to heaven, then that would be better. Heaven is like a big thing for Christians, and I feel like we do a lot of good things with that in mind. But if you just do it because you want to help people and you want to love your neighbor and love them as much as God loves us, then we would do it genuinely and it would be better. That's it. Thank you.
While interfaith learning and dialogue is, of course, full of challenges, it's also full of many blessings. And so we asked the other two TBS fellows and the other two Eastern fellows to address some of the blessings of interfaith partnership. So, TBS fellows, why don't you come up first?
Hello, my name is Zoe Hill. So from what I've learned so far, especially through a Zoom call with Joe last week, is that Christians try to follow their own morals and values through the lens of Jesus and his teachings. And I found that I really admire how there is so much focus on doing good for the community and even the world. When I first heard about this, it kind of related to the Jewish teaching of mitzvot, which is the commandment to do good deeds. So it kind of caused me to think of this Christian ideology about following Jesus' values, which create good, as an extension of those mitzvot. The way that Jesus' miracles and teachings are woven into the prayers and mindset of a Christian continues to amaze me, as I think that everyone in the world could always use a reminder to create good when there is bad.
Hi, I'm Maya, and I'm going to be talking about how my faith has deepened because of this experience. So, throughout this experience, my appreciation for Judaism has grown deeply. Personally, I don't follow my religion very strictly, but I deeply value the relationships that my temple community has provided me with. Learning about Christianity has allowed me to learn about the different values and beliefs that other people hold. I find these differences so interesting, and I love seeing how similar parts of our faiths are. I have grown to appreciate Judaism more after talking one-on-one with some of our fellows. We discussed how the role that community plays in Christianity is much less significant than the role it plays in Judaism. Since my Jewish community is so important to me, I have grown to appreciate having this in my life after learning about Christianity. The differences between our religion are evident. However, learning about them has given me a deep respect for both of our faiths.
And I guess Anastasia and Darian, you guys are up next.
Hi, my name is Darian Gish. I am a senior biblical studies and theology major here at Eastern. During our time at Temple Beth Shalom last semester, we actually got a chance to engage with some of the service projects that they were working on, such as the Chesed Kitchen, which was really eye-opening. And tomorrow as well, we're going to be partnering together with Yacht as they partner with us here at Eastern to serve some of the homeless in Philadelphia. And I guess it strikes me as really interesting that despite coming from two separate faith religions, we can find a common mission towards justice and doing right in the world, especially for Judaism, which just so recently in the last century has experienced such huge identity traumas with the Holocaust, as well as just persecution throughout most of their history. So it's really inspiring to know that despite all that, they strive towards doing some right in the world and putting it back together in some way.
Hi, I'm Anastasia. I'm a junior social work major here. My personal faith background, I come from a Russian Orthodox community. My family, growing up, that was our life. We went to church. Almost everyone in my church is related to one another. So that's always something that I valued in my own experiences, is having the traditions of my church and my family so intertwined. And I find that, especially being at Eastern, I get to learn about different sects of Christianity and learning more about the Reformation and things like that I was not familiar with growing up. So going to Temple Beth Shalom was such a great experience for me to continue that dialogue outside of Christianity and how Judaism and Christianity can connect. And I really admire the tradition that Judaism holds. I can connect with that, and I appreciate that. And it was such a great experience being able to stay with our fellows' family in their home and to see the connection there as well with I love Julia, she's right here, like back in the home. And it's not just on a Sunday morning, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. I'm a Christian, and as soon as I walk out, then that's the real me. It's still intertwined, and I really appreciate that. Or Friday night for Shabbat, and then nothing. And also, as Darian said, the service portion of the faith is so big. I think at Eastern here, especially with faith, reason, and justice, it's not a value that's low on the value list in Judaism, which I very much respect. It's when talking to other people at the temple too, it was very much of a community aspect, and the Chesed group, I really appreciate how they make blankets, and we made chicken soup. So if someone's sick, they go and they wrap a blanket around the person that's sick and say a prayer with them and be there with them in fellowship, even though it'd be considered like a mega temple or like a mega church for us. There's still such close-knit community. And also just the cultural aspect of Judaism. It's not just, I think Ali was saying, like, cultural. It's not just about the faith, but about who we are as people. And I really appreciate that, because I think that there's so many different parts of Christianity that sometimes we lose that we are all children of God and we are all connected in that way. And I think that this fellowship is a really great representation of that we're all connected and we're all one, even though we may look and act differently in our practices. We're all worshiping the same awesome Creator.
Well, thank you, fellows. You did really well. I have never been quoted so often, and I appreciate that. And for those resident theologians and philosophers in our midst, I'm not sure the vapor, liquid, solid works, but we're trying to figure out that Trinity as best as we can. But we're really proud of you. I think what energizes myself and Rachel is hearing from the young people, the students, and what they're experiencing here. Now we're going to move into a time when Rachel and I can have just a brief conversation on a couple of questions that we are wrestling with and we're thinking through about our own faith traditions and what we appreciate about other faith traditions. I will say one thing. What I admire a lot of things about the Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship, but what I admire is the ability not to confuse religious pluralism with religious relativism. And let me explain what I mean by that, because it's really important to me. We're here as a fellowship understanding that there are differences in our religious traditions. That's pluralism, and to appreciate a robust pluralism about how it means to live in the world with our religious differences. Sometimes religious relativism means it doesn't really matter what you believe, and perhaps there are no differences between major religions and so forth and so on. I just think that is in some ways unproductive, unhealthy. It's not that we are taking the differences to separate us, but we're realizing that there are unique differences between Christianity and Judaism. And because of that, I think it deepens our own faith. And what I heard from each of the fellows is that I think there's even a deeper appreciation of your own faith as you interact with someone from a different religious tradition. I can remember when Pope Francis came in 2015 for his visit, and he was in the front of Independence Hall, and he gave a wonderful homily on the importance of religious pluralism, to really be clear about our differences, but do so in a lovingly supportive, common ground work. So I'm going to, how do you want to do this? You want to stand up here? Come on up here, Rachel Happel. Come on up here. Rachel's a dear friend and a collaborator, and so I'll mention a couple things that in my faith tradition as a Christian I find compelling, that keeps me Christian in some ways, and then I'll turn it over to you, and maybe we can go back and forth on that. So for me, as a Christian, what I find compelling, two words that begin with the letter I, and then a word that begins with the letter H. The two words that begin with the letter I for me is the image of God, the Imago Dei, the importance of understanding that every human being is made in the image and likeness of God. Very compelling to me. That's something that certainly we share in common. And the ability to understand that the Imago Dei means that all persons are of deep worth to God. All persons, regardless of functionality, regardless of what they can do, not do. Everyone is fully made in the image and likeness of God. And the other I word for me is the incarnation. That's really compelling, that God came in the flesh and dwelt among us in Jesus of Nazareth. I don't fully always understand the fully human and fully divine, but I find Jesus so compelling as both a historical figure, but also as the Son of God on earth to show us the way, and his teachings and so forth and so on. We're in the season of Lent. We talked a little bit about that. I appreciate you emailing me. It's nice to get an email from a Jewish person asking, I don't know if there's a prayer I could pray for you during Lent, because I don't know much about Lent, and that's okay. I do the same thing with Rosh Hashanah and other Yom Kippur, so thank you. But we are in the season of Lent, which is important, so important to me as we understand Jesus' journey to Jerusalem, his subsequent death, burial, resurrection, and then later on ascension. To me, that's compelling. I think I understand my own humanness, my own humanity, because God became flesh and dwelt among us. And then the other word is hospitality. To me, what keeps me Christian is being able to welcome people as well as to be welcomed, and to be part of a community that is centered on Jesus Christ, and that is not concerned about always boundaries or barriers, but really trying to center people in a relationship with Jesus Christ. So hospitality, I mean, Matthew 25, many of our students know, when you were a stranger, you welcomed me. It's one of a parable at the end. To me, that's so compelling to feel welcomed, and I think that's something within Christianity that I find compelling, and then the justice part of it too. which is part of our mantra, faith, reason, and justice there. But I'll turn it over to Rachel. Just some things I'm thinking about.
Wow, thank you, Joe. It's hard when you are living a religious life, living a Jewish life, to think about how to boil it down to, the few things. But I boiled it down to a few things that really keep me connected and keep me going and really have formed the basis for my Jewish practice and my Jewish life. So the first is the wealth of rituals and practices within Judaism that really help us mark time and bring meaning to our lives. So for me, it's really about separating the holy from the everyday. And we have so many rituals and blessings and ways of marking time that help us do that. So, for example, when a baby is born, there's a ritual for that is has very specific blessings and prayers. When someone dies, there are rituals for that, known as Shiva, house of mourning. When someone gets married, there are a specific set of blessings that you say. So those are sort of big life cycle moments. And then within our year, we mark time through our holiday cycle. Within our week, we mark time through Shabbat rituals. And within our day, depending on our level of observance, we mark time in particular ways. I know that in my family, when I became a parent, it was really important to me to think about that with my children. And so there's a blessing we say when our children wake up in the morning, and before they go to bed, there's another blessing that we sing to them at night. And it's been amazing to watch my children grow into that experience on their own. One of them is now 14 and one's 10. And if they're away from me, sometimes my 14-year-old will text me the blessing before she goes to bed at night. Don't tell her I told you that. But it's just to see the power of ritual and blessing in ways of marking time that really give rhythm and meaning to the way we live. Another piece is the concept of Yisrael. So we are the people of Israel. In Hebrew, that's Yisrael. That word actually means to struggle or to wrestle with God. So in Judaism, we are not told that we need to believe anything specific, but we need to be engaging in the struggle. We need to be engaging in that wrestling with God to understand what it is, what do we believe. And so, I wouldn't say, on a day-to-day basis, but certainly regularly in my life, I am thinking about that. What does that mean to wrestle with God? What is my relationship with God? And then the rich textual and liturgical tradition that we have, where I know that on a given holiday, there are Jews all over the world, in different countries, different places, who are saying the same prayers that I'm saying, who are reading the same part of the Torah that I'm reading. And there's something really powerful about that if I'm away, if I were to travel somewhere, if I were to find a synagogue, that would be familiar to me. And so I think, one of the fellows talked about Judaism really being a people. We are a faith, yes, but we're really a people, and we're connected all over the world. So that's very powerful to me as well. And then finally, I would say our commitment to chesed. Darian mentioned that word earlier. Chesed means kindness in Judaism, and we have specific ways of enacting kindness in our lives. So we are told that there are several commandments connected to chesed: visiting the sick, welcoming the stranger, rejoicing with the bride and groom, comforting mourners, and the list goes on, but there are very particular ways that we do that. And I've seen that in Christianity, we're connected in that way as well. So those are a few things. I'm sure there's more, but those are the top four. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. So just briefly, what I find compelling, what I have holy envy about when I visit Temple Bet Shalom every fall, which I now have done so 4 times, which I think makes me an honorary member of the temple. I don't know. I will say that there are many things, rituals being one of them, because for me, rituals help to shape the rhythms of a day, a week, a month. So those are really important. They're life-giving to me. But I'll kind of summarize just quickly what I really enjoy or appreciate, and I'll say that your emphasis on education. And I came across, believe it or not, a quotation from Krista Stendhal a couple of months before he passed away in 2008. He was interviewed by Harvard Divinity School for an article. This is what he said, his quote from Krista Stendhal, who I just mentioned before. He said, "We Christians, when we meet Jews, are inclined to say, 'Let us pray together.' Jews, when we meet Christians for fruitful encounter, are inclined to extend a different kind of invitation. Let's study together." For me, for the church to become a place of study is really important, and I have holy envy. I don't know about your church background, or maybe you currently go to church, but I have seen, and this is just a limited experience, I've seen a decreasing emphasis on adult education, on Christian formation, types of things in local churches. And I am just wholly envious of Temple Bet Shalom's commitment to the quality of education for those who attend the temple. I'll leave it as that. Why don't you go?
I love this concept of holy envy. I grew up as the only Jewish person in my elementary school in a town outside Boston, and one of very few in my high school. And so most of my life, my friends were not Jewish. They were actually, many of them were Catholic. And I think I started with a sense of maybe envy early on, but I'm not sure it was holy envy. You know, as my friends were taking their first communion and I saw the pretty white dresses they got to wear, or, you know, things like that. But I think I've really discovered holy envy through this partnership. And so one of the things that I really appreciate that I've seen here at Eastern is the spontaneity of prayer that occurs in Christian settings. You know, in Judaism, we really have two types of prayer. There's the keva, which is the fixed prayer, which are specific words that we say for specific occasions, and kavanah, which means sincere, you know, intentional prayer. And I think often we veer toward the sides of keva. We're always doing the fixed prayer, and sometimes that can just kind of happen by rote. You get into a habit of saying them, but you're not really necessarily thinking about what you're saying. And what I've seen here is the real intention, that real prayer from the heart. Before every meal, when there's a grace said, it's usually just so appropriate for the occasion. It seems to really be coming from that person's heart. And that's something that I am wholly envious of. I wish that sort of spontaneity of prayer could come into our practice as well. And the other piece I would say is a real personal relationship with God. The idea of speaking to God directly or hearing God's voice in our daily lives. One of the fellows last year, I remember she talked about hearing God's voice or listening for God's voice, and that it was a concept that I think was foreign for a lot of our fellows, and also for me, just to think about that personal relationship, and it's something that I am wholly envious of as well.
We hope that you'll be able to join us for conversation during lunch, if that's possible. We have the students will be with us, and Rachel, myself, Lyria, and Sydney and David. We are just about out of time, but that's okay. We'll be lingering in front here for the next few minutes. Would you just thank everyone who participated this morning? And for our students, we'll be sending out the applications for the next cohort of the Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship in May. It'll come through a MailChimp, like an email. If you are interested, this is the time to start thinking about your commitment for next year. We would love to get many applications to see who will be the next cohort, the 5th cohort of the Chamberlain Interfaith Fellowship. God bless you all. You're dismissed. Thank you so much for being here this morning.